All right, welcome and thank you for joining today's webcast, A Strategic Guide to Incident Response with cybersecurity expert Derek A. Smith. You're also joined by Beyond Trust Retina product manager Alex DaCosta, who will run through a brief intro and demo of Beyond Trust towards the end of the webinar, so be sure to stick around for that. My name is Sarah and I am your host today, and before we dive into the webcast, I just wanted to touch on a few housekeeping items. First thing, all attendee lines are muted. However, in an effort to keep this interactive, please submit your questions via the chat box in the GoToMeeting console. We'll try to cover your questions at the end of the webinar during our Q&A time. Also, today's session is being recorded, and as attendees, you will all receive the link to the recording via an email later this week. So at this point, I'd like to welcome and turn the phone over to Derek. Derek, thank you so much for joining us today, and please take it away. It's all yours.
Hi, thank you for having me today. Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be here again. Just briefly, I want to tell you a little bit about myself, and then we get right into this. Again, my name is Derek Smith. I'm at the National Cybersecurity Institute at Excelsior College, located in Washington, D.C. And our mission is for thought leadership around cybersecurity, and also, of course, to drive people into our college programs eventually. Before that, I served in the Air Force, Army, and the Navy. I was in the Navy 2 years, Air Force 15, and the Army National Guard 8 years. And I spent 18 years as a federal agent. So I was an agent with the Treasury Department, the Postal Service, and while in the military, Army CID and Air Force OSI. So I've had a lot of time dealing with different types of incidents. Also, I was the incident coordinator for Booz Allen Hamilton for the internal IT security team. And I've worked at Computer Network Defense for Army Research Lab and a number of other places. So with that being said, I want to start with just a story that drives home the importance of incident response for me and hopefully for everybody else on the webinar. Basically, when 9/11 occurred, I was still an agent with the Department of Treasury. And of course, we got the call, just like everyone else, and we saw on television what was happening. But as agents, we had a mission. And our mission was to respond. And so and I'm sorry, this is not IT related, but this is still an incident. I want to drive home a couple of points. So the calls came in. We have what we call our flyaway bags. It has all our gear in it, bulletproof vests, everything we need to go out and do our job. So we grab our weapons, we strap on our weapons, strap on our vests, we get our bags, we get ready to leave, we go out to our cars. And, you know, let me take a step back. I was a GS-14 at the time, so we did have an incident response procedure that we all were supposed to follow. Only thing we'd ever rehearsed, though, was our call trees. Every once in a while, we'd get on the call trees and make the phone calls and make sure we can contact everybody. So now things have really hit the fan, and we have to respond. So we get to our cars, and we get ready to go, and there's no place we can go. There's gridlock downtown. You know, the Department of Treasury is right next to the White House. So we've heard that a plane is incoming to the White House. We heard the Pentagon had been hit. We heard about a car bomb that is supposedly going off in front of the State Department. We found out later that wasn't true. But, you know, it's chaotic right now. We go to our cars and we can't go anywhere. So now we want to communicate. We pull out our BlackBerries. They used to issue BlackBerries back then. Get our phones out and we can't talk to anybody. The good thing about the BlackBerries back then, if you recall, is that they had a walkie-talkie feature, so we can talk to each other that way. We didn't know what we were doing. We were a federal agency, you know, we were trying to get out and make things happen, but we had never dealt with anything this chaotic before. So we didn't know what to do. Our incident response plan went out the window just like everybody else's did. My point here is that even though we had one, most of us did not know anything about the incident response plan and what we were supposed to do. You know, we're agents trained for these type of events, and we didn't know how to respond. So that was kind of our introduction, or my introduction to the importance of incident response. Okay, this is a serious matter, and we didn't know what to do. So, of course, we went back and we did training around that, and we tried to make it better, and this is kind of like my career now. Moving into that, today we're going to talk about what is incident response. I'm going to give you some definitions and some examples you should know. It's pretty much on a basic level for these things, but it's going to give you some good information to go back and start building upon. I'm going to tell you how to recognize an incident, talk a little bit about policy, about educating your people, and about how to react should an incident occur. Now, to get started, I want to tell you two other quick things that have occurred in the past that I think are very important. First of all, at Booz Allen, as I said, I was the coordinator for incidents for their internal team. When around July 2011, we were hit by Anonymous. So anonymous hackers breached our Booz Allen Hamilton security. He said, I have here on the slide, they dumped 90,000 email addresses. Well, a lot of things were in the newspaper, and they talked about how we were sent a bill of $300 and some by Anonymous, and all these things that they joked about. And of course, Booz Allen, we're supposed to be securing everyone else's systems, and we get hit. But I tell you, behind the scenes, we were operating like a well-oiled machine when the incident did occur. Everybody's going to get hit sometime. That's just a fact, and you all know that. But once it occurred, we took action. And our incident response team went through some of the procedures that I'm going to talk about today. As a coordinator, I had phone calls coming in, of course, from every news person in the world. I had legal. We had our stakeholders that we had to answer to. We had a lot of things going on that was very important to what we were doing. But our plan was in place, and we were acting on our plan. We had to, and I won't get into all the steps, but of course we had to stop the bleeding, triage. We had to see what had occurred and see what was happening because people wanted to know. We had to draft our response to media and to internal folks as well. You know, because once this happened, you know that every contract out there, the folks who handle the contracts are making calls to Booz Allen saying, hey, am I protected? Am I compromised because you protect my security? So we had to deal with it. We had to have the right answers for people when they call. And then, of course, afterwards, we had to put our forensics teams on to figure out what had happened. And I tell you that things went very, very well on the inside despite what was being said. Another big one happened at the National Defense University was hacked while I was working computer network defense. I ran the teams at the Army Research Laboratory here in Maryland. So our computer networks at the National Defense University were attacked. They had been hijacked, and we don't know what kind of damage was done. We don't know who the attackers were or anything like that. But at the computer network defense team, we had to go in and fix it. And the underlying problem, and this is general information, is out for folks, so I'm not telling anything classified, but the problem was this. National Defense University is an open university, of course, for military, but anybody in the world can attend. So, and their system has to be open because of that, you know, somewhat open. So folks can get access to their system initially because there are students there. You know, and we tracked it to probably certain students that were attending at the time. I won't call out any country or names. But once they get that entree, as you know, inside, now they can do other things to try to escalate their privileges, and that's what happened. We worked over at NDU probably for 6 months to a year just fixing that problem. Okay? And the problem is once we fixed it, we still had the same issue. Because they're a university, they still had to keep those systems somewhat open. So we had to make sure that we had other things around it to monitor and make sure we knew what was happening. So with those examples in hand, let's look at what incidents truly are. So, an incident, I get it from this special publication 800-61. That's the one that covered for the federal government and government agencies what incidents are. And here I has an act of violating an explicit, I'm sorry, let me just move something out of my way here, but policies or anything like that. But basically, when we talk about information security incident, I define it as any real or suspected adverse event that occurs in relation to the security of your organization, my organization, the computer systems, the computer networks, any confidential or restricted data, anything like that becomes an incident. And they can include things like attempts to gain unauthorized access to your system, theft or loss of a laptop in an airport like we hear so often, or a PDA or whatever you're carrying these days, unwanted disruption of denial of service, virus worms, malware outbreaks, you know, unauthorized use of systems. I can tell you all kind of stories about these things as I go on, but and unauthorized use of your network and resources. This is basically what we're going to say an incident is. And I'll stop there as far as the incident. I think you get the idea here. Next thing you should understand is what incident handling then is once we understand the incident. I'm going to talk more about incidents and how to identify it later. But incident handling is basically the process of actually detecting and analyzing that incident once it has occurred. Okay? Not only that, but we want to also limit the effects that that incident has on our organization. You know, it's very important that we stop the bleeding, as I said, and I'll talk more about that, and then we make sure that that other things do not occur. Okay? Now, for example, if an attacker was to break into the system, like I said before with my examples, but if an attacker was to break into the system through the internet, let's say, and the incident handling response team is called into play, our procedures, our process should be able to detect the security breach that we have. And then our incident handlers will need to go in and they have to analyze the data and they have to determine how serious that attack actually is. And then they have to prioritize that incident, and then they have to also take action to ensure that the progress of the incident is halted right then and right there, and that any systems that are affected are returned to normal operation some kind of way. And we need to do that also as soon as possible. So that's kind of the main procedure, the main thing we want to do with incident response. Now, we have a team for doing that, and that team, of course, is our incident response team. And it's very important because that incident response team has to be specially trained. I'm not just going to pull a team of guys together from my IT folks. They all may be capable, but that's not the idea behind this. We want to have a trained team that's ready to respond. And at Booz Allen, we had an incident response team. Now, they might have had other jobs as well, but they were our team to call into place should something happen. Now, they're also called Computer Security Incident Response Team, CSIRT. You've probably heard that term as well. But they are responsible for providing incident response services to all parts of the organization, or part of the organization in general, but they're there to protect your organization. I say they, I don't know what your jobs are here, but you all are there to protect your organizations. So that team receives information on the possible incidents that occur, they investigate them, they take action to ensure that the damage caused is kept to a minimum. It's their job to do the triage that I've been speaking about. Now, a few terms that you should keep in mind here, a few incident recovery terms that comes into play, and it may be different for different organizations, but pretty much this is what's going to be happening. So we have our interruption window you see on my slide, and that's the time between the failure and the restoration of a minimum level of critical services. So if Booz Allen or whomever is brought down, the interruption window is the time that they're going to be down, and we need to get them back up. It's the minimum needed to carry on. What do I need to have in place to carry on? Okay. Now we have our service delivery objective, our level of service in alternate mode, and actually that's what the minimum need to carry on. What can we do now that our services has been affected by this incident? Okay. And then we have that maximum tolerable outage I have here, or your MTO, and that's the acceptable time between the failure and when we're going to return to full operation. You see I have a diagram there to kind of walk you through that. But we have our acceptable interruption when you see there, but we have to get back up and running and have to do it as soon as possible. Have something else that I don't have on the slide, but it's called our recovery time objective, or our RTO. And that's the maximum time between the incident and the alternate mode becoming available. You know, when does the incident occur? And now I have to recover and I have to have something up and running. That's my recovery time objective. Okay, and basically it's the length of the acceptable interruption window that I talked about a little bit earlier. Now, what is the purpose of incident response? And all of you have some kind of idea what that is. This is a basic idea, is not the only one, but this is what we're trying to do. Basically, first of all, we want to minimize the overall impact of that incident. You know, I say hide from public scrutiny. I'm not trying to say that we want to hide this from the public. But right now, we're still trying to figure out what's going on. So we don't want to have it out there that Booz Allen's hit by Anonymous, and everybody that we cover are panicking at this point. We need to limit the information that's going out until we figure out what's going on. We want to stop further progression of that attack, of course, and I've talked about it a couple of times. We need to involve key trained personnel, as I talked about. Now, that personnel is not only going to be IT. You know, you're going to have people throughout your organization. Legal is going to be involved. Media relations, if you have them, or public affairs, or whatever you want to call them. You know, management folks are going to be calling you constantly. One of the things I had as an incident coordinator at Booz Allen is that when something occurred, management was constantly on the phone with me. And I'm like, geez, we can't get anything done because we're answering so many management questions. But they're answering the stakeholders, and they want to know, and they have other people who want to know what's going on, from organizational leaders to colonels and generals and everybody else. They want to know, and they want to know now. And our job is to control the situation, of course. We also want to recover quickly and efficiently, as I spoke about before. So we want to respond as if we're going to prosecute. That's going to be very important as we go on, but when you have an incident, you don't know what the outcome is going to be. So you want to treat it as if you're going to respond. Remember, I come from a special agent background, an investigative background. You may have to fire someone. You may have to prosecute someone. You from the get-go, and you don't want your evidence tainted. So from the get-go, you need to respond as if you're going to prosecute. And then if possible, you need to replace the system with a new one, if you have to, okay, and if that's possible, get something up and running. Priority one, though, is to get business back up to normal as soon as possible, right? I talk about ensuring all participants are notified because, again, people are calling and they need and want to know, so you're going to keep notifying folks throughout the process. On a time, actually at Booz Allen, we used to have a timetable. We're going to get back to you at this time, and that time with some answers, because that's what they wanted to see. And again, you want to record everything. And there's a couple reasons to record it I'm going to get into, but one's for prosecution and the other one's for lessons learned, because it's very important to learn lessons around this so that it will not occur again in the future. Next is secure the system, of course. You want to secure your system and lock down all known avenues of attack once something occurs. First of all, that should be done anyway, right? Your system should be secured anyway. But now we want to make sure we lock down all known avenues of attack. We want to assess the system for any vulnerabilities that we're not aware of. And this should be happening not just for part when the incident occurs, but it should be part of your process anyway to keep incident from recurring in the first place. It's part of your vulnerability management or your risk management program. Also, you want to implement your proper auditing procedures to see what's going on. One of the biggest problems I see from being in this field for some time is that most people are not doing the audits that they need to do. We fill squares, we fill these squares because we have compliance and things like that. But how many of us really have the time to go back and do a full audit on a daily basis? At Army Research Laboratory, I had to do an audit in the morning. Our folks, they captured data live. But for every hour of data that was captured, we were only actually able to look at 10 minutes of that data. Now, at the end of the day, the supervisor was supposed to go back and review all the data. But think about it, we had 95 subscribers to Computer Network Defense. We have 40-some people working, and it's 24/7 operation. How much can you really look at this stuff? But we have to. And then we have to implement any new security measures for any vulnerabilities or attacks that have occurred where we see we need new measures put in place. Now we want to follow up because it's never really over. Anonymous can always hit us again, whomever can hit us again, especially, we're going to talk about this later, but especially if they've planted back doors or rootkits or something like that to get themselves back in. So we want to ensure that all our systems are secure, and we want to continue prosecution or any administrative actions that we've already started. We want to make sure something occurs, if there's something that occurs, because as I told you in the Army Research Lab with NDU, we don't know who the attackers are for sure. We have a good idea, but we never proved it for sure. Okay. We want to securely store all evidence and notes just in case we need them. I said treat it as if you're going to prosecute, and then you need to get those lessons learned out to all your folks in the organization who need to have those as quickly as possible. Okay. I used to have to write those things, and man, people were banging on the door to see what the lessons learned are before we even had the incident cleared up and things back up and running. So, okay, Derek, that's all good, but how do we actually recognize an incident? How do we know that we actually have an incident occurring, what that incident is? I'm going to tell you this, that's hard to say. You know, there's no easy answer for that, but I'll try to give you a few things you can look for, okay? I have here signs of an incident fall into one of two categories, precursors and indicators. A precursor is a sign that an incident may occur in the future, and an indicator is a sign that an incident may have occurred or may be occurring right now. I'll get more into that in just a second. But for most organizations, the most challenging part of the incident response process is accurately detecting and assessing whatever the possible incidents might be. So determining whether an incident has occurred, first of all, do I have an incident, do I have an event? What's the difference between an incident and an event? You know, and then an event is kind of like that precursor. And if we did have something occur, what's the type? What's the extent? What's the magnitude of that problem? We have to think about all those things, okay? So what makes this very complicated for us is basically there's three factors involved. One, these incidents might be detected through many different means. At CND, well, when I was at Army Research Lab, we had sensors out on our subscribers, and these sensors capture data. But they can be captured with many different means. They have various levels of detail and fidelity built into those sensors I'm talking about. So automated detection capabilities that we had included things like network-based and host-based IDPs, antivirus software, log analyzers, all type of things like that. And the incidents can also be detected using manual means. We had live people. Actually, we didn't just depend on the machines at Army Research Laboratory. We had people sitting there watching traffic as it came through, and they had to use their brains to try to figure out what was going on. But we also have mechanical means like somebody just coming in and reporting it. The user say, I got something going on, or I opened this email, or whatever it may be, and they might report it. Okay? Some of those incidents that we saw at Army Research Lab had overt signs that we could easily detect. But then there were others that were almost impossible for us to detect until something went wrong. So that's number one. That's one factor. A second factor was the volume of potential signs of incidents that we had were very, very high. You can imagine with 95 subscribers who were all government or military, we had all kinds of information coming in. It wasn't uncommon for us to receive thousands, sometimes millions, of intrusion detection sensor alerts every single day. So we had to sift through those things. And the third thing was that deep, specialized technical logic and extensive experience was necessary for proper and efficient analysis of those incident-related matters that we had. And I'm going to tell you this, I had a lot of good people on my team, but I also found out I had people who weren't so good. Everybody, I'm sure everybody attending is a security person, but most people did not know how to, or does not know how to accurately read a log or identify certain security issues that were coming through the computer system. All right? All right. So some signs of incidents before I go on, just a real quick few of them, I guess. But for instance, your web server entries that show high usage of a vulnerability scanner, let's say. These are precursors. An announcement of a new exploit might be a precursor. A threat from a group stating that their group is going to attack the organization, like Anonymous. They were saying they were going to attack Booz Allen because of something else that occurred earlier that Booz Allen had helped out on. So those are precursors. Okay. Then your actual indicators might be a network intrusion detection sensor alerted when a buffer overflow attempt occurred, or your antivirus software detected that it had been affected by malware, let's say, or even a system administrator sees a file name with some unusual characters in it. These are the type of things we say, okay, now we have some indicators that something may have occurred. Whatever it is that you're looking at, much of that incident response reaction and how you're going to classify these things as a real response or an event or whatever is usually going to stem from your policy. Okay, your policy is gonna be highly individualized to your particular organization. You're going to determine what those things are. But some key elements I have here of any policy should be like a statement from management commitment. You really need management to commit to what you all are doing. Your purpose and your objectives of the policy. Your scope. What's the scope of the policy? That means to whom does it apply, and what applies, and under what circumstances does it apply. You need to have definitions of computer incidents, like I just told you, and the related terms, like the things we just went through. Your organizational structure and definition of roles, responsibilities, levels. These have to include the authority of the incident response team, us, to actually confiscate or disconnect equipment and to monitor suspicious activity. We have to be empowered with that. Okay. The requirements for reporting certain types of incidents and how do we report them, all those things have to be into that organizational structure piece of your policy. We needed something like a chart. We usually have a diagram and a chart that prioritized the incidents and gave severity ratings to the incidents, and then that helped our teams understand how to respond. We have to have performance measures in place, and performance measures I'm going to talk about on a separate slide. That's very, very important. We have to have metrics in place for everything we do in security. I find that lacking in many organizations that I look into. Okay? And then what's our reporting structure and what kind of contact forms do we use when we're reporting? We don't want to wait till something happened to figure this all out. It should be part of that policy from the beginning. So let's look at incident response in general. Now this is an incident response plan, and there are many ways to do this. This one comes from the system review manual that ISACA puts out. So this is the ISACA incident response plan. It's a little bit different in the NIST manual that I told you about earlier. All right. First of all, we have, and I'm going to talk about these individually, but I have preparation, identification, containment, analysis, and eradication, recovery, and of course those lessons learned I talk about. Let's look at them individually. In preparation, I told you this should be part of your risk management process. So as part of preparing, we should do a business impact assessment, as you see here. And that needs to be conducted by each business process or department or whatever you call them in your organization to determine how an incident is going to affect that particular unit or that particular department or your entire organization, and what steps need to be taken in order to mitigate or respond to whatever incident that we might have. So again, this is part of the risk management as well as the incident response process. Okay. The incident response plan that we have is going to be the document that comes out of this, and it's going to contain procedures to follow in case of emergency. It should be usable by anybody. Well, I wouldn't say anybody, but someone who wasn't involved in the creation should be able to pick this thing up and use it. And it needs to be accessible in any unusual circumstances. A lot of people I talk to, I do this every semester. I teach classes on CISSP and things like that, and I ask my students, where's their plan? Oh, it's on the computer at work. And the first thing I know, you're an IT security guy. You should know that your computer could go down. You need to have a hard copy of this plan. So make sure that's accessible. And if the only copy is in your desk drawer when a fire comes and guts out your building or whatever, then you know you're doing something wrong. You need to have it in a couple of different places. So it's great. I have a hard copy, but it's in my desk at work. That's not going to help me either. Okay? Bullet 3 and 4 meet with government emergency management and law enforcement plans and things like that. You know, when do you call? How are government agencies or law enforcement going to be able to help me? And when do I actually involve law enforcement in this? Because some organizations or companies are reluctant to involve law enforcement. But I'm an ex-law enforcement officer, so I'm okay with that. But I still got to look at what the company's best interests or the organization's best interests are, and when is the proper time to call law enforcement in. Then we have to have our technologies in place to detect. So you can't determine if an incident has occurred unless there are detection techniques already in place, or technologies if you want to call it that. So it makes sense that there's a detection technique and some type of metrics, as I said before, for each risk that we come up with when we're doing our planning. So for each risk that's concerned, there should be a technique in order to mitigate it. Okay. So on this slide here, I have every tool I have here. You don't have to implement every single one of these, but depending on the decision of your risk management, or I'm sorry, your risk assessment, you determine what type of things you need from this slide, and from many more. These are just examples. Okay. These I have here that are useful tools for detecting incidents, your NIDS, your HIDS, all those types of things. Now, one of the most important things you need to do is get management participation. And I don't mean a manager saying, hey, go out and make me a plan, because that's not good enough. You know, they say make me a plan because they're compelled to do so. But we need to have them actually participate in determining what's important and how to protect it from the beginning. They need to propose alternatives for us. They need to include business criticality, you know, what the costs are, what's the time to recover, our redundancy costs. Redundancy costs are our costs of alternate equipment and lines to deal with these incidents. How much does it cost to bring that in? The cost of redundancy and detection can be weighed against that business impact analysis that I talked about before in the cost when an incident occurs. But you have to have their backing on this. And you see my second bullet point here. Management makes the final decision. So senior management has to be convinced that it's worth the money, that they're going to get some type of return on investment for what they're going to spend, or you're not going to be successful. All right. Next we have incident response plan context. I kind of went over that, so I'm not going to go over too much of that again. But you have to, one of the things I want to point out here is that you have to look at your pre-incident readiness. You need to be ready before this even occurs. When I worked at TSA, I was the ISSO there, and we would have failover. We had 3 different areas where we kept information, because this was the secure flight program for all the no-flying lists for the entire United States and world, probably wherever we flew. But that couldn't go down. They had to work 24/7. So we would do a full failover to one of our other locations, and we would lose. These are practice, of course, and we would lose everything. That's why it's important to do this ahead of time, pre-incident readiness. And another thing I want to point out is down below, second from the bottom, is you have to have step-by-step procedures to recover that anyone can do. Right? I'm sorry, I'm just passionate about this stuff. I found out how necessary it is. Now we move on to stage 2, and that's the identification stage. And I kept mentioning triage. Triage, if you watch TV and you hear triage, you know that's about, and if you're a soldier like me or law enforcement, we really know this, but triage is about stopping the bleeding and prioritizing the injuries to maximize the probability of survival. That's what it means for law enforcement, and that's what it means for the military. You want to keep that person alive. Same thing here. Determine what's wrong and taking the correct first actions until the bleeding stops and the experts are ready to take over. So our incident response team comes in and they stop the bleeding, they put some band-aids on it, and then we can call in all our other bigwigs or other security professionals. Some of them might be them to come in and fix this thing. Okay? So how to declare a disaster involves more than just communication. It also means knowing when to declare a disaster as opposed to some lesser incident. It might not be a disaster. It might be something that you can easily take care of. But you want your response to be proportional to the scale of the incident, not more, not less. If you overreact, like shutting down the entire network over one unauthorized entry, you know we're going to be in a lot of trouble. I should say you're going to be in a lot of trouble. You waste a lot of time and you waste a lot of money. But if you underreact, the incident may become a lot worse than it already is. So you got to have that balance. You have to have that right level, and you have to have the knowledgeable people there to make sure it's done right. And I kept talking about prosecution. Establish a chain of custody for evidence from the beginning, and that's going to be important. I'll cover that more in just a little bit. Now, looking more at triage, there's three things I want to do here. Okay, I want to sort, categorize. Well, it's more than three, but I want to sort. I want to sort them. I want to categorize them, correlate them, prioritize, and assign them. So what does that mean? Basically, you see it here, but categorize. Is it a DOS? Is it malicious code? What is it that I'm dealing with? Then I'm going to prioritize. The limited resources require prioritizing a response to that to minimize the impact. How do I deal with this? And then who do I assign it to? Who's on duty? Who's free? Who's competent in this area? You know, who's my forensics expert? Because everybody doesn't do forensics. Everybody does not do, incident response. So we have to have the right people there to stop the bleeding. Now, I talk about chain of custody because, again, I'm law enforcement, ex-law enforcement. It's very important because it's going to be very necessary to have a good chain of custody if anything is going to go to court, or even if you're going to use it for administrative proceedings in the government sector, okay? You just want to fire somebody or penalize someone. You need to be concerned with this right from the start, if it's a concern at all. You need to make sure, as I said before, you're acting as if you're going to prosecute. Now, chain of custody here, chain of custody means somebody's always going to have eyes on the evidence and always know where it is and never lost your sight, or else you get thrown out of court. So chain of custody requires that a witness be present for all the actions that you take, that a qualified expert does the incident response and the forensic work, or the work accomplished stands up in court as a professional, that we know what we're doing because you're going to have to testify this, that any original disk or whatever you're using for storage is not modified, and that the whereabouts of the disk is always, or whatever storage device is always secure from the point of the incident, as soon as it occurs, on. It needs to be locked, you need to have limited access to it, and everything has to be witnessed and signed out. Okay? I'm not going to go into the CISSP course here, but you learn more about that if you took something like that. Stage 3 is containment. And in the containment phase, we want to do just that. Employees who are not a part of your team, whoever is not directly involved in the incident, still need to know what their roles are and still need to know what they have to do should an incident occur. Even if it's just to get out of the way and let the incident response team do their work. They need to know, get out of the way, sysadmin, they're coming in and taking over. Now, the proper actions, of course, is going to be defined by your incident response plan, not mine, not what I have on this slide. You should always follow this plan, and you should always stick to it. You shouldn't deviate from it. All right? For example, nobody should be talking in the news except the public relations or the top management folks. Booz Allen was calling, people were getting calls, and some people were saying things they shouldn't have said, you know, or getting close to saying things they shouldn't have said. And luckily, they called me, the incident coordinator. Right? You have to be wary of that. So they'll just pick up the phone and try to find whoever they can. But we want to activate the incident response team to contain the threat. We want to isolate the problem, and we want to obtain and preserve evidence here in the containment phase. Some of the things we're going to do here. In technical, we're going to collect data, analyze log files, deploy patches. For the managers, they're going to look at business impact results. You know, how do they come in and what do they need to do? Who do they escalate it to? What needs to be approved? And legal has to be involved. to issue with issues involved in the investigation or anything that's going on, prosecution, liability, just to talk to the clients if they need to. And I should have public affairs on his part of containment as well, because public affairs need to be involved. I'm going to talk about that as we go on as well. All right. Then stage 4 is analyze it and eradicate it. Now, forensics can be a useful tool here. I mentioned forensics earlier. Your forensic specialists come into play. But rebuilding may be necessary if someone attacked your computer or your system, your network, and they entered as an admin, let's say. Okay. While some of the malware that we have on there might be detected, it's possible, as I told you earlier, that they could have put some back doors on or some rootkit parts, maybe undetected that you didn't see. They could have replaced operating system software, put in new logs, passwords, whatever it may be. So you need to know exactly what they did, and it may be best to just rebuild the entire system if you're in doubt and you can't figure out what's going on, and if security is a large concern. But you see here, you need to determine how the attack occurred. Mainly is remove that root cause, rebuild the system if you have to, and discuss recovery with your management. You know, they have to make decisions on what's going to ultimately happen. You need to be discussing this with them. And then you sit back and you analyze it. Okay. Now it's time to determine the root of the problem and the effects that it had on your system or your organization. So what happened? What was involved? How did it happen? You know, what vulnerability did they, cause this attack to happen so we can shut this down? Where did it originate from if you can determine that? All these things are part of your analysis process that you want to go through, right? And there you actually remove that root cause. If admin or root compromise, rebuild the system, as I said before. Implement recent patches. All passwords should be changed, right? Change those passwords. And then we move in stage 5, which is recovery. This is where you get back to normal operations, and that you ensure that that restore is fully tested and operational. Everything is working the way it should be. You roll it back, you put in your baseline, whatever you need to do to get those operations back up and running again. And then this is probably one of the most important things you need to do, and that's lessons learned. Okay? All right, so you need to go back and you need to follow up. You need to see what occurred, how did it occur. You know, write an incident report, write up your lessons learned, and then present that report to the relevant stakeholders. Now, those relevant stakeholders are the IT team, the managers. It might be legal, because they're going to have to answer questions. It might be public affairs, so you might have to do a plan also in public in non-tech speak, so the public affairs and legal can understand it. Okay, but you need to do this because these slides that I just went over are mainly around the incident process itself, and mainly how to make it better for the next time. How do we fix it? How do we keep these incidents from occurring next time? Okay, but it's also a good time to review our preventative measures that we already have in place. Okay, were they adequate? Probably not, right? Given that it failed, they probably weren't adequate. Was the cost of the incident high enough to justify spending more resources in order to avoid another incident? Because you may have done the best you can do with the resources that you had. So was it enough? What else can we do? What else can we spend? Okay. Now, during our planning process, those were the 6 steps. But during our planning processes, we need to look at, again, our risk and our business impact assessments, response and recovery strategy, and just find what it is that we're trying to protect. We need to put in our incident response plan, that's the IRP, and our disaster response plan, because it's part of that. It's going to actually affect this, certain parts. It's going to affect IT. Need to test and respond. And as I told you with the thing with 9/11, we didn't really test it. We do call trees, but we never test it. As a matter of fact, at most organizations I've been to, even today, when I go in and talk to organizations, and even my own organizations, they don't test these plans very often. I always hear, well, we can't do a full failover because we don't have time to bring everything down. We can't bring everything down. We can't break anything. Most of the time, the full plan is never tested. And, of course, it's very important to audit both of those plans and make changes appropriately on a yearly basis. They should be done yearly. Another very important thing, though, is training. Make sure that your teams are very well trained and have everything they need to do in order to carry out their role. Okay, including the IMT or the incident management team, the managers involved, not just the response team. Okay, and if there's any changes that you do to your IRP or your DRP, make sure this training is done on that as well. Another important aspect is to have good incident management metrics, and I talked about that earlier. Make sure that you're measuring things, that you know how many incidents have been reported, how many have been detected, what's the total damage if incidents have not been contained in a timely manner. Go back and have these measures. You can take this slide and set up your metrics and make sure you're asking at least these questions. Right? And coordination, I told you, very, very important. I'm not going to go to all these different types of things, but you have, as you see on the top left, a coordinating team, your incident response team, and I have other incident response team. But you have to make sure that good coordination, good communication is going on among everyone. At Booz Allen, when it came down to it, no information left unless Derek put it out. I was the incident coordinator. Everything came to me from my team and went out from me to other places like legal and whomever else needed information. That way we control what was going out to the best of our abilities at that time. Only way we do this is make sure people are trained and know that they're only supposed to talk to me. Okay? So in conclusion, real quick, 4 things we want to do I talked about. We want to minimize overall impact. We want to recover quickly and efficiently. We want to secure our system. And we want to make sure we have good follow-up procedures, as I spoke about. I do have some remember this. I always have remember this. Establish a formal incident response capability, number 1. Okay? Create an incident response policy. We talked about that. Develop an incident response plan based on the incident response policy after we finish it. That's the only way you can do it. Develop incident response procedures. And this comes from the NIST guideline, by the way. But establish policies and procedures regarding incident-related information sharing. Provide pertinent information on incidents to the appropriate organization, and you should share, by the way. All right, that's part of my coordination. Share with other organizations, other teams. Consider the relevant factors when selecting an incident response team model. Select people with appropriate skills for the incident response team. Identify other groups within the organization that need to be or may have to participate in incident handling. It's not just IT. And determine which services the team need to be able to offer to the organization. Or do I need to outsource or bring someone else in? You know, do I need a red team to come in now and fix things? Think about these things. Remember this. With that being said, my portion is over. I think, I'm not sure, is it question and answer time now?
I believe we'll do that at the end. Yep. Okay. Thank you, Derek. We'll do the questions at the end.
Okay.
So guys, this is Alex DaCosta again. I'm the Retina product manager here at Beyond Trust. So what I'd like to do now is just briefly show you at a high level what we're doing here at Beyond Trust that really plays into what Derek was talking about. A lot of the solutions he mentioned you might want to have in place to help you with these incident responses or to prevent, honestly, from having these incidents or to reduce the likelihood of these incidents happening. I mean, Derek, you speak the truth there when you say, you know, we should really think that this is going to happen. It's a matter of when, not if. But still, we want to provide you here at Beyond Trust with some solutions that will give you really the visibility so you can make the necessary decisions and know what's happening in your environment to reduce that risk. And this really impacts both from an asset perspective as well as from a user's perspective. So at a high level, we're going to talk about 2 sort of sides of the house here at Beyond Trust. On the Retina side, on the orange side, that's our vulnerability management solution. So this is the ability to look at sort of the outside threats, right? What vulnerabilities exist within your enterprise. Everything from workstation servers, network devices, just anything and everything that's plugged into your network, being able to find it, assess it, see what vulnerabilities it has, help you prioritize and really understand what's most critical, what you got to go after, and obviously how to fix it, and all of that would be included. That would be our Retina side of the house. Then the power broker side, more on the blue side, on the left-hand side, here we're looking at more sort of the user threat, minimizing that, if you will. So we have a comprehensive really set of solutions to address these potential insider threats. This could be everything from our password management solution. This is the ability now to really control, secure, and record who has access to what systems and delegate those privileges to who can get access to what systems, rather than everybody sort of having admin rights and being able to log into any system they want. Then we have privilege management. What are we doing now once somebody gains access to a system? Now that I'm on a machine, being able to remove admin rights really from the entire enterprise. There's really no reason today for anyone to be logged onto a system with admin privileges. So Power Broker will allow you to run a list privilege model. You log in as a standard user, whether it's a workstation or a server, and then based on rules that have been created, it will delegate privileges. It will elevate the application so they run with enough privileges so they function, so they work, while the user always remains a standard user. That way, again, you minimize the risk of that user overusing their privileges within the environment. Now, we also have an Active Directory bridging solution, taking all your non-Windows systems, Unix, Linux, within the environment that tend to reside sort of in their own island, bring them into the Active Directory world. In the case, again, back to the incident response. What if you have to terminate somebody, right? What if you got to terminate them? You go to Active Directory, lock the account, whatever you got to do there. Make sure that that actually goes across all systems that that person might have access to. If you've got Unix, Linux that is not joined to your domains, not joined to Active Directory, how do you know where the user may also have access to, right? So bringing that in. And then finally, auditing and protection. This is the ability to really provide real-time change auditing and alerting for compliance and compatibility to your critical systems. We're talking Active Directory, Exchange, SQL, Windows file systems, even the ability to roll back and restore changes. What if somebody, again, went into Active Directory and just made a bulk change that just destroyed it? Just have that feature to be able to roll back and minimize your downtime when things go wrong. So this is our entire sort of portfolio that all is managed through our Beyond Insight IT risk management platform, if you see at the very top of the slide. So everything that I talked about all points into this management platform so that we can easily merge these solutions together and really have a good understanding of what's happening. If we just take a couple of examples here from vulnerability side of the house, it's very typical to just run vulnerability scans, get a report, and understand, all right, I've got these vulnerabilities in my environment. But how do we know if users are actually executing applications that are tied to those vulnerabilities, which would add even more context? Well, by adding a couple of solutions here, such as Power Broker Privilege Management, which knows what applications our users are executing, we can now really tell you, your users are running these apps which are vulnerable, potentially exploitable, helps you prioritize farther. With password management, also with the integration with privilege management. I'm a standard user on a machine. I need to run applications that might need to connect to other systems, and I would typically maybe do a run as and run those applications as a different user that has more privileges so that it can connect to other systems. Imagine the ability to just have an option where the application gets executed. It goes and retrieves the credentials from a safe. It injects them into the application and connects to whatever server it needs to without the user ever seeing those sets of credentials. Because again, once I have them, once I have a username and password, I really can do whatever I want if those credentials have any privileges. So that's a bit of a high level of what we're doing here beyond Insight. I'm sorry, Beyond Trust with Beyond Insight. So what I want to show you next, just here in a couple of minutes that we have, is that management console to give you a sense of what we can do. So let me get that up on the screen. So as I get logged in here, I'm going to show you a couple of sides to the solution, just give you a little sort of taste as to the command and control side or the back end of the solution, if you will. This is a solution that, again, will receive data from all of the products that you may have from us, all these plugins, if you will. So we can see information about my environment. I can see all the vulnerabilities that are being found in my environment. I can easily sort by exploitability, as an example. On the left-hand side, you're going to find smart groups. Smart groups are a very easy way to help you focus what you're looking at. Rather than just seeing one long list of every machine I own in my enterprise, I might want to quickly focus my attention on a given group. I'm going to say web servers. This asset page is now centric on what is happening within my web servers. What is happening from a vulnerabilities perspective. I can see those vulnerabilities, the ones with exploits already available in the wild. I can go down to details as to what the vulnerability means, how do I fix it, any details about it, even down to information about the exploits. Here's the VMware vulnerability where there are a number of different exploits already available. So this is very easy for somebody to leverage against you. There's also malware toolkit we can point to. There's a Russian exploit toolkit available since 2012 we can obtain to actually use to take over that particular machine because of this vulnerability that's there. So this is kind of the outside threat that we're going to be able to pinpoint here. Then we have our user or the user threat as well. I can go into my Power Broker for Windows or Unix, Linux. That's going to let me know the events that are occurring on these machines based on what the users are doing. So I can show you events here over time. Yeah, let's see if this will work for me. Oh, looks like it's not liking my demo today. The beauty of live demos. Let's try this again real quick. But I'll talk through it as I click through the screens. But this is the ability to understand. Here we go. This is the ability to understand what my users are doing. What are they clicking on? What applications are they running that maybe I've deemed that they shouldn't run, denied applications that are being run. Where is UAC prompting? Where are applications that require elevation that my users are attempting to run that, that require these privileges that they may or may not have, or ultimately I want to remove these privileges so the product will let me know what applications in essence will break in a least privilege model, and we can have our solution step in and elevate those applications you deem to be okay so they can run with privileges. And we can also record all of these sessions, right? When critical applications are running, have a session monitoring, have it record what happens while it's there. That helps with accountability, that helps with forensics, and really helps keep everyone sort of straight. So we also show you lots of details about your systems. So if I drill down here into a particular target, I'm going to be able to see all sorts of attributes about those machines. I'm going to pick on a box here called Serenity. Being able to understand hardware, ports, services, share, software that's installed, but more importantly, what are the user accounts in my environment, right? Being able to discover what accounts do I have out there, and what privileges do they have, and how old are those passwords. In this case, I've got some administrator accounts. Look at this one. This one has a password that hasn't been reset in 916 days. I'm sure that I've got people that have come and gone during that time period that would know that password. If ever they wanted to use it against me, they could. So being able to identify these potential threats throughout the environment, bring these passwords into our safe solution so they're restarted, I'm sure said reset within some frequency, maybe every 30, 60, 90 days, and also delegating who can actually check these accounts out. And one last item I'd like to show you here is our analytics and reporting. From a time perspective, just again, want to give you just a quick sense of what we can do here from a reporting perspective. Overall, the entire solution has about 300 reports out of the box. Honestly, nobody needs 300 reports. The idea, though, is every enterprise out there is going to be different. There's going to be different wants and needs from a reporting perspective, so we're going to have you covered. The ones that I do want to focus on, just this one report, is from our Clarity family of reports. So yes, we have your reports that tell you what vulnerabilities you have and help you prioritize and give you your, what your users are doing and all these metrics. But Clarity is going above and beyond. It's actually taking all of this data. We're collecting all of these data points about your systems, and we're going to put all this data into 100 clusters. So it's cluster mapping behind the scenes. We're going to take all your assets, all the user profiles, sort of their metrics, etc. We'll find patterns, and there typically is patterns, different departments, different sort of users. There's going to be patterns as to what they're doing and about their machine. So this Clarity is meant to show you users or machines that have gone rogue, Either the user is clicking on things they never clicked on before, requesting access to systems they've never requested access to. Maybe the systems have malware, opening up new services, new services are running, new ports are open, etc. Things that weren't there before. We start to pick up these patterns as we go along. Clarity will show you what these outliers are about machines, what are unique items about these users or machines that don't seem to occur anywhere else in the environment. We also collect hash information about items running in your environment, send those to our cloud, and assess those hashes across 60 or so different sort of antivirus solutions, etc., to again pinpoint if there's any malware associated with the actual applications your users are running, and then give you that sort of above and beyond perspective about your environment. So that's part of our Beyond Inside analytics and reporting side. Now we're coming almost here to the end, so I'm going to pause and throw it back to you, Sarah, if you want to bring in the do the poll.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. So we had a bunch of questions that came in, so I will start on those as I launch this poll. If you could just take a moment, would you like to receive a free trial for one of our PAM, Privileged Account Management, or Vulnerability Management solutions? So I'm going to leave this poll up. Go ahead and select yes if you'd like to receive a free trial and play around with one of those options in your own environment. So a couple of things that came in, and most of them were for Derek. Derek, to whom should incidents be reported? And Derek, you might need to jump off of mute.
I'm sorry, I was on mute.
There you are.
So basically, the organization, I'm sorry, you all. Organizations need to establish whoever their clear point of contact is going to be for reporting incidents internally. So they already have that as part of the incident response program. Now, some of those people are going to structure their incident response capabilities so that all incidents are reported directly to the incident response team, and that's okay too. But some other ones are going to use their existing support structures that they have in place if they don't have an incident response team, like the IT help desk or something like that. So that's what I'm going to say. You can use your, let me say this too, because we have federal agencies, but federal agencies are required under the law to report all incidents to the United States Computer Emergency Readiness Team, or US CERT. So you have your internal team, your internal process, or your CERT team, or the folks you go to.
Derek, what should someone do who discovers that a system has been attacked?
So same thing, when you discover it's been attacked, you should immediately stop using the system first of all. Don't do anything else on it, and then contact your help desk or your emergency or your incident response team. Now you need to, you might need to assist in initially handling the incident if that's part of your job, like physically monitoring the system until your incident handlers arrive so you'll be able to tell them what's happening or protect the evidence on it. But the main thing is make sure you contact your team right away.
Thank you so much. Thanks to everybody who attended. We're going to wrap this up here. Just a reminder, we will be sending you a link to the recording and the PowerPoint presentation later this week. Give it about 2 business days, and it will come from the email address communications@beyondtrust.com. So be on the lookout for that. At this point, I'd like to thank Derek. Thank you so much. Great information, super insightful. We look forward to the next one with you. And thanks to everybody who joined us today and spending the last 60 minutes with us. We really appreciate your time, and we hope you have a great day. And see you at the next one. Take care, guys. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everyone.